If you were a teacher, what would you do if one of your students likes you? In today's movie summary, a married teacher is finding it hard to avoid temptation from his good-looking student. See how far this banned relationship will go. The movie starts with a girl named Cairo Sweet. She was left alone by her lawyer, parents working overseas. Living alone in a Tennessee house, writing becomes her way out. Wearing a short skirt and high socks, she walks through the woods to reach her school. When she gets to school, she meets their class teacher, Jonathan Miller, a middle-aged man who failed being a writer, so he turns into teaching. Jonathan is like Cairo's father because of their age gap. However, Cairo secretly likes Jonathan and intentionally takes his class because Cairo got to class early. Jonathan told her to start reading the books for the whole semester. He was amazed when Cairo said that she had already read them as their subject had 12 books. While they were talking, Winnie, a student who repeated Jonathan's class, suddenly came. Winnie is also a close friend of Cairo, who quickly invited her to eat after the two left. The interested Jonathan went to Cairo's desk to check the book she was reading. While reading, Boris, Jonathan's friend, came, took the book Jonathan was reading, and made fun of him while reading the sexual content. Jonathan tried to stop him, but Boris kept going. One of the things that got Boris's attention was the book written by Jonathan. Jonathan was also shocked to know that Cairo had a copy of his book. When he got home, he saw his wife Beatrice busy on her laptop. He tried to talk to her, but it was clear she was very busy, so he phoned her directly, happily telling that one of his students was willingly reading his book while they were talking. Her co-worker Amy stopped their talk with a call. After the call, Jonathan says sexual things in his wife's ear and they drink. The two gets excited, but when they are about to have sex, Amy calls again. That is why Jonathan got frustrated. The next day, he told it to Boris and said his weekend was not good. Boris then teases him as he tells his story. While talking in the field, they saw Cairo walking from the woods. The sexually annoyed Jonathan looks at her as she gets near to them. As she got to them, she took off her earphones and said hello to them. The two asked her if she was not afraid to go through the woods, and her only answer was that she was the most scary thing there. Hearing this, Jonathan laughed while in the locker room when he acted to have dropped her things. Boris knew that she did it on purpose and went to her to ask what she wanted. It was clear that she was trying to attract Boris because she had a grade problem. Cairo saw this and told Winnie that she had a lot of courage at Cairo's house. The two friends hang out in her room. Cairo is worried about her college admission because she has to answer a question about her best achievement, unable to think of one. Cairo asks for Winnie's help. Winnie tries to give Cairo ideas, but everything seems too normal. Suddenly, Winnie suggests to Cairo that she should try to impress their teachers and write an essay about it. Confused, Cairo mentions the 20-year age difference between them and doubts. The idea, however, the flirty Winnie keeps telling Cairo that it's normal. She adds that Jonathan seems like a nice and gentle man, making him a good option for Cairo's first time, so that she won't feel any pain. Winnie keeps playing with Cairo's mind, making her more curious about intimacy. Winnie even mentions that she saw Jonathan's long looks at Cairo, which makes her feel nervous and embarrassed. Days passed, and Cairo's curiosity about intimacy kept growing. It grew to the point where she wanted to try it out. During class, Cairo always looked at Jonathan, and her attraction to him was obvious. Suddenly, Jonathan came from behind and quietly told her to come to his office after class. In his office, Jonathan talked with Boris and asked him to join him and his wife for dinner. Boris agreed and continued to joke around before leaving. After Boris left, Jonathan tried to copy his dance moves, and that's when Cairo caught him dancing. They both laughed and started talking about Winnie. Jonathan was impressed by their friendship and kept discussing Cairo's home situation. They sat down and talked about what Cairo had written. Jonathan was so impressed that he memorized it. Cairo felt honored and happy that Jonathan paid attention to her. Jonathan wanted Cairo to write another short story, but this time he suggested focusing on her favorite writer if she did so. Jonathan promised to excuse her from the midterm. Jonathan gave Cairo a topic, and she immediately agreed. In the middle of their conversation, Cairo suddenly mentioned that she had read Jonathan's book. She said she liked it and quoted some parts from the book. Jonathan was touched to hear this. Realizing that his lesser-known book had gained attention, Jonathan invited Cairo to meet over the weekend to discuss the short story further. Later that day, the three of them had dinner and drank at the bar. Winnie came to them to take their orders after she left. Beatrice asked if Winnie was the student Jonathan was talking about. Jonathan said, "No, but it is clear that Beatrice is envious." She started venting her anger to Jonathan, attacking his dreams and insulting him in front of Boris. On the weekend, Cairo went to their meeting spot. While she was searching for Jonathan, he showed up behind her and whispered. He sat next to her and joined in conversation. Jonathan told her that they had been doing this for a long time, improving their skills in literature, while a man named Elliot was reading poetry in front. Cairo sneaked looks at Jonathan, who was carefully listening. Later, they talked about Elliot's performance. The two looked at each other while Cairo smoked. She offered it to Jonathan, and he quickly accepted the next day as the friends were chatting again in their usual place. Cairo came wearing attractive clothes. Boris asked her about it, but Cairo ignored him and gave them coffee. When Boris left, Cairo sat next to Jonathan. The increasing intimacy between them was obvious as they jokingly teased each other and shared cigarettes. On the way to class, Jonathan got a text from his wife inviting him on a weekend trip. He was happy, especially when his wife said that it's his turn to ride her after class. Cairo right away approached him to talk about her short story. Jonathan seemed in a rush, keen to be with his wife, carelessly approves of her writings. After Jonathan left, Winnie messed around the classroom while she was at Jonathan's desk. Boris came looking for Jonathan instead of telling Boris where Jonathan was. Winnie kept tempting Boris by placing his phone in her cleavage. Cairo was searching for her phone as it went missing. Meanwhile, Jonathan's plans kept getting delayed as Amy kept calling Beatrice while waiting. Jonathan's phone rang inside his bag. He answered it and was surprised to hear Cairo. On the other end, she told Jonathan that she accidentally placed her phone in his bag. The two talked while Jonathan's wife was also on the phone. Frustrated and disappointed that they couldn't have a weekend getaway, Jonathan volunteered to bring Cairo's phone to her house. Jonathan quickly agreed, and Cairo warned him about the incoming rain. While on his way, a heavy downpour suddenly began. Upon arriving, he saw Cairo walking out of his front door, wearing an enticing dress. Amidst the rain, Jonathan stood there and Cairo approached him. The two locked eyes, and due to Jonathan's suppressed desire, they passionately embraced and kissed in the pouring rain. After the intense moment, both of them were left in a daze with Jonathan's mind seemingly wandering. Suddenly, Cairo sent Jonathan his midterm exam. He snapped out of his daydream as his wife asked him to leave her alone. Since she was getting distracted, Jonathan left and went to a small house outside their home. Staying there, he immediately printed Cairo's finished work and began reading it, engrossed by the captivating story with mature content. When it reached the climax of the story, Jonathan became excited as he imagined Cairo in the scene. Eager to satisfy his desire, Jonathan quickly unzipped his pants and indulged in self-pleasure. The next day, Cairo entered excitedly wearing a dress to captivate Jonathan even more. However, when she entered, it seemed like Jonathan's attitude had changed. He walked into the classroom and didn't greet her as before. Concerned, Cairo asked him if everything was okay. Jonathan expressed his disappointment with what Cairo had done in contrast to what he felt about her writing. Jonathan showed that he didn't like it because it contained explicit content and it's inappropriate. Cairo explained that it was about them, but Jonathan continued to reject what she had done. Cairo attempted to explain, but Jonathan wouldn't listen once and for all. Jonathan decided to reject both Cairo's paperwork and their relationship. Cairo tried to reveal Jonathan's true feelings, but he insulted her work and regretted trusting her. Hearing this, Cairo had an outburst of anger and insulted Jonathan. In return, she says that he cannot do what she did, so he's just envious of her. She then calls his writings mediocre and boring. However, Jonathan stood firm in their relationship as teacher and student, which angers Cairo even more. Cairo became even angrier and dared Jonathan to fail her in the midterm exam. The broken-hearted young student quickly went home and drank with Winnie while crying over Jonathan's betrayal and what he did. Meanwhile, Jonathan returned home in despair and started drinking. Beatrice noticed this and approached her husband asking about the problem. Initially, Jonathan didn't reveal the issue, but eventually confessed that it involved his student. He said that he was disappointed with the submitted short story because it contained inappropriate content. His wife became curious about its content, so he had him recite it. While Jonathan was quoting its climax, Beatrice became aroused and turned on. She climbed on top of him and kissed him intensely as they were ready to enjoy themselves. Boris showed up unexpectedly. Jonathan was left frustrated again and hurried to the bathroom. Meanwhile, Cairo kept complaining to Winnie, saying that he knew Jonathan was just faking. Winnie, on the other hand, kept talking to Boris, who didn't care about her. She attempted to annoy him, but it didn't work. Seeing this, Cairo chose to kiss Winnie with a plan in mind to send it to Boris. The two took off their shirts and snapped photos of themselves smooching. Boris got it, then called, and Beatrice gave it to Jonathan. It told Jonathan that they had heard about something going on between him and Cairo. Of course, Jonathan rejected it and told his wife that it was false. However, Beatrice warned him that if it was true, he could not only lose his job, but he might also lose his wife the next day. Cairo skipped class as she was in the principal's office talking to Joyce. During the class, Winnie's sorrow was obvious. After class, she came to Jonathan explaining how much Cairo meant to her while crying. However, Jonathan stayed indifferent, ignoring her efforts to make him feel guilty. Later on, the vice principal called both of them to the office for an interview about what happened. The principal interviewed Cairo first so that she would know what the right questions to ask Jonathan without hiding anything. Cairo told everything that happened. When it was Jonathan's turn, he showed nervousness and regret. At the end of the interview, Joyce noticed Cairo's steady statements, so she decided to suspend Jonathan. After leaving the office, Boris came to him, showing his displeasure. Boris told him to know his limits before their problem got worse, then left to give him room. When Jonathan got home, he told Beatrice that he got suspended. Beatrice quickly asked if something happened, but Jonathan denied it. He only said that he gave special favors to Cairo, which Beatrice didn't believe. Continuing to challenge Jonathan, she fires Jonathan with questions until she trapped him. When asked Jonathan if he has fallen for her, he only paused and did not refuse. The two fought, yelling and offending each other. The two started to point out each other's flaws until they said painful words. The built-up anger began to show as they said everything at the end. Beatrice leaves with plan in her mind to leave him. Meanwhile, Winnie faced Cairo about the chance of Jonathan losing his job because of her. Cairo, not bothered by these worries, said that it's her best accomplishment and added it in her college essay. She tells Winnie that Jonathan looked down on her, so she's doing this to get even with him. At the end of the movie, Cairo's essay showed the possible fate of Jonathan in his marriage work and their relationship. As she completed her essay, the movie ended. Don't forget to subscribe and enable notifications to catch more videos like this. Thank you for watching.